The Human Optimization Podcast is proudly brought to you by Vicon Supplements, where quality meets sustainability. Vicon's all-natural supplements are handcrafted and sustainably produced in Canada, bringing you products that nourish both your well-being and our planet. Visit viconsupplements.com today and be a part of a greener, healthier future.
Are you ready to embark on a journey to the best version of you? Join me, Lisa Pitel-Killah, as I dive deep into the world of hair tissue mineral analysis and functional medicine with fellow experts, and guide you on the path of unlocking your full potential. As a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, I'm on a mission to reach high-performance professionals from around the world to help you minimize tiring symptoms, maximize health, and gain unstoppable energy. This is the Human Optimization Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. I am Lisa Pitel-Killah, your host, and here with me today, I have a very special guest, Dana Kay. She is a board-certified holistic health and nutrition practitioner, 2 times international best-selling author and CEO and founder of the ADHD Thrive Institute. As a mother of a child with ADHD, she knows firsthand the struggles that come with parenting a neurodiverse child and the freedom that is possible once parents learn to reduce the symptoms. Dana has been featured in Forbes and on Fox and CBS and various other online media. She has also been a guest at multiple parenting and ADHD summits and podcasts. She's already helped over 1,000 families find freedom from ADHD symptoms so that children with ADHD can thrive at home, at school, and in life. Dana, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm excited for you to be here because this is such a big problem. Right. And some parents, they don't even realize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going to talk. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about today, just with regards to what are some of the things to, some of the identifying symptoms and things like that. But first off, tell us about you. What brought you into the holistic health industry, the health industry? Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, I am sure you have shared on your podcast many times people's stories, and I'm sure there's a common theme, especially with practitioners. Why did you get into this industry?
Mm-hmm.
And because I have a personal story around ADHD,
Yeah.
believe it or not, I was actually completely removed from the health and nutrition space. I was actually an accountant.
Wow, that is amazing.
I know. I try not to share that story very often. I'm very far removed from it now. But honestly, like when I was growing up, all I wanted to be was a businesswoman with a big office and a desk, and I got there. And I planned to continue in that field, and I might have done so if the concerns over my son's health hadn't grown as much as he did. And he was such a boisterous young boy.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible twos, what's the terrible threes? Then we got to the fours. I think the fours were the worst. But I always had this inkling deep down inside that there was something just a little bit different.
Yeah.
About him.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always ask the teachers at the preschool, does he have a lot of energy? He seems a lot of energy. He bounces off the walls. He can't sort of sit down at a table. At home, he'd have these dramatic meltdowns. And I was always told by the teachers, no, he's just a boy. No, he's just a boy. He'll grow out of it. But eventually his tantrums became more severe and his teachers started noticing differences as well. We went to the doctor just before the age of 5. So he was 4, he was diagnosed with ADHD, and we were straight away given a prescription medication.
Right.
And at first, if I'm being completely honest, I was relieved with the diagnosis, and I was really excited about the medication. I was thinking to myself, we're finally going to get the help we need.
Yeah.
And I was, running to the drugstore. But then what happened? At first things were good. He started to calm down. He was able to play with his baby brother, but then his dosage increased. And then he started to experience side effects. He wasn't able to sleep, he lost weight, and his doctor prescribed another medication to counteract the side effects of the first. And this continued until he was on 3 very strong medications and he started to experience terrible anxiety. And when the doctor suggested a fourth medication to counteract some of those new side effects that popped up, I just couldn't do it anymore. And that's when I said no. And that's when my career path completely changed. I went back to school. I did my science degree, multiple specific certifications in this particular area, and I really learned that ADHD symptoms can be reduced naturally. There's so much that can be done to help a child with ADHD thrive. Today, my son is 14. He is thriving. He hasn't been on meds for years. He is a straight A student, but for me, that is not the main thing that I want. The most important thing is he's happy. My family's happy, and we now have that peace and that calm in our house. And once I learned all of this, I couldn't keep that to myself. Once I saw the importance of food and nutrition and these natural strategies that had on his behavior, on our family, I couldn't keep this information to myself. I really just didn't want anyone else to have to go through the struggles my family went through. And I've been lucky enough now to have helped over 1,000 other families get to the same place as me, but just a whole lot quicker.
Yeah, amazing. And it's true because, these medications do all come with side effects, right? Right. We have the long list. And not only that, I mean, we have to think of the impact even on the liver of a child and adult for that matter. And so that's really interesting. Just, again, you get to a breaking point where it's like, no, we're not going down this road. Let's do this differently.
I know. Yeah, that was exactly what it was for me. And I just had to say no more. And we don't know what those impact of medication on the kids with ADHD, the long-term impact. And so I'm just here to really sort of shout it from the rooftops. There are other ways. Families do not need to suffer.
Yeah. And so let's talk about some of the, I guess, you kind of shared a couple of them there, but some of the symptoms or reactions, I guess, in a child that may kind of bring to light that this is something that they might be dealing with. What would a parent look for?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I want to say, there's this spectrum. It's really hard to decipher as a parent when you're in that moment. Is this normal child behavior or is it ADHD? It's actually one of the most common mental disorders affecting children. There's about 6 million children that have been diagnosed just in the USA. I know that you're based in Canada. The diagnosis rate is actually lower in Canada. I've got a couple of suspicions as to why that is. We won't get there yet, but the suspicions are around, not having some of the toxins in food that are allowed in America, because food is huge. But when my son's ADHD symptoms were at his worst, he struggled to sit still. He couldn't sort of just sit down and finish a meal. He would sort of bounce off the wall. There was a lot of emotional dysregulation. And as a family, we sort of felt like we were walking around on eggshells, just sort of waiting for that next meltdown to occur. Now, the standard sort of ADHD symptoms fall into 2 main categories. We've got hyperactive, and we've hyperactive and impulsive, or we've got inattentive, or you can have a combination of the two. So, as I said, unable to sit still, hyperactivity, impulsivity, fidgeting, unable to focus or pay attention, lots of physical movement and talking, aggression, emotional dysregulation.
Yeah. Okay. So, and you mentioned food, and I think that this is so important. I mean, always food first, because nutrition is where it all starts. And so what are, can you explain a little bit more just with regards to food, some of the changes that need to be made or that you suggest making, and just some of the other things to consider with regards to diet?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think food for me should come first.
Hmm.
And when a child is diagnosed with ADHD, the first course of treatment that most doctors suggest is medication. And many
Right.
of them don't actually tell parents that altering the diet can significantly reduce ADHD symptoms. And so for me, I'm a big, big advocate of food first. And when I started really learning what some of the big exacerbators for ADHD were, I learned that we needed to start healing the gut. We needed to start reducing inflammation in the body. Inflammation exacerbates ADHD symptoms. A breakdown in the gut affects the gut brain connection.
Hmm.
And so that's why I recommend a food first approach. And so what we do there is we really look to try and reduce foods that cause inflammation in the body.
Hmm.
And parents, if you're listening and you're a parent and you're thinking to yourself, okay, yeah, I can make some dietary changes. All I'm going to say to you right now, when I say some of these foods, don't get scared. Rome wasn't built in a day. You do not need to make all of these changes at once. Because I know when I do say it, a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do all of that. That seems like everything my child eats.
Yeah.
But some of the main inflammatory foods are things that contain gluten, dairy, and soy, and particularly foods that have artificial flavors and artificial colors. Now, I alluded to earlier that the diagnosis rate in Canada is lower than in the USA, and one of those reasons is some of the artificial colors in Canada are not allowed, whereas in the USA they are. And so some of the regulations are actually different in both countries. So we want to start to reduce inflammation in the body, take away some of those foods that are really, really exacerbating that inflammation. And when we start to reduce that, we start to actually allow that gut to heal.
Yeah.
And I'll talk about the gut-brain connection in a second, but diet, it's not just about what to take out, it's also what to put back in. And
Hmm.
so don't just focus on what I can't have, but focus on all the amazing things you can have. We want to have a diet that's rich in whole foods, fresh fruits, veggies, grass-fed animal protein,
Hmm.
seafood, meat, eggs, those sort of things. A lot of healthy fats to feed that brain, a lot of spring water because you want to avoid toxins in some water. I often think of diet like building a house.
Hmm.
When you're building a house and a solid foundation, it is an optional. It's a necessity. So if you don't have a solid foundation, that house isn't going to be very strong. And so if we approach our body like that house, diet is our foundation. If our diet is poor, we can never function at our best. That's true for us as adults, but it is extra true for our children.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about inflammation. And I think that maybe sometimes people don't understand the amount of
Mhm.
stress that inflammation puts on the body, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the underlying stressors of many things, even
Mhm.
outside of ADHD.
Mhm.
And so when you think about the underlying stressors being some food that they're consuming and inflammation, what else would be some of those underlying stressors that may contribute to ADHD?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I love that you brought up that inflammation being one of those main drivers. I actually have a funny analogy that I use to talk about inflammation. And for those viewing, I'll actually show you a little trash can.
I
But
love
for
it.
those that
Oh,
aren't viewing, you won't see this, but I'm holding like a mini trash can. And we're all born with a metaphorical trash can in our body.
mhm,
And our goal through life is to keep the load on the trash can low. Okay. And every Monday, we take that trash can out to the side of the road and we put it there so the garbage trucks can take it, empty it, and then we take it back inside. But throughout life, all of these little things, these load goes on the trash can. So we've got poor diet. We might have exposure to heavy metals and
mhm,
toxins. And, I know you probably talk a lot about the HTMA on this podcast. And one of those things that HTMA tests is those heavy metals. So we might get exposure to those heavy metals. We might get exposure to environmental toxins. We might get exposure to bad bacteria. Yeah. Parasites, medication can cause inflammation. And so all of that goes into our bucket. But what I've found is a lot of kids with ADHD really do not have the ability to take their trash can, do not have the ability to take their trash can out to the side of the road every single Monday. And that means that their detoxification pathways are compromised. So what happens, all this toxic load goes onto the trash can and then it tips over into our body, all goes into our body, and that's how inflammation occurs. And so what we're really trying to do is we're trying to reduce the load on the trash can as much as possible, and we're trying to optimize the detoxification so our kiddos can empty them out on a regular basis and we don't get that inflammatory load. So as I said, substance like toxins, heavy metals, poor diet, meds, bacteria, pesticides, they all contribute to that overflowing trash can.
Yeah. Well, and that I love, for those of you not watching, you missed the tiniest trash can I've ever seen. That was super cute. But such a good point, because it's true. We have to be able to keep everything flowing out. Our body needs to be healthy to be able to detox. And I think sometimes too, people think about detox, right? Whether it's with ourselves or children, it doesn't matter. But they're not thinking about the health of the host in order to support the detox, right? That's a really important part. And again, that comes back around to eating nutrient-dense foods and whole foods and cut back the processed and all these artificial sweeteners and everything else, right? Because then, there's just so many kind of negative things that could come from that.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I want to actually just add to that.
Yeah.
We have a lot of parents. I run a free Facebook group called the ADHD Parent Nutrition Support Group on Facebook. There's about 35,000 members in it. And so they're parents with kids with ADHD. And there's a lot of parents that come on there and say, what supplement can I use for my child to help him focus? Or what supplement can I use to stop the aggression in my child? Yeah. And you're so right in that the host needs to be healthy. You cannot supplement your way out of a poor diet or a body riddled with inflammation.
Yep. I couldn't agree more with that statement. And I think that's what all of us need to realize. And a lot of people are just looking for that magic pill to pop and everything's going to fix everything. That doesn't exist. That does not exist in this world. There's more to it than that on all fronts. What do you think, based on your experience, I want to get into cryptopyrrole as well. What are some of the biggest hurdles that families tend to go through when they're making some of these changes to change nutrition? Because again, we are a product of our parents, right?
Yep.
And even mine, I have other challenges now, so I had to completely change my diet, which I've done. But we are a product of our parents and how we were brought up, and those dishes that make us feel all warm and fuzzy. How do parents how do they make those changes, and what are some of the tips for success?
Yeah, definitely. Look, there are challenges that are going to come up. And I think that unfortunately, the way that society is, it revolves so much around food. But unfortunately, this food is what's creating a lot of these issues that everyone's having. One of the big challenges that I faced when I first started was I tried to change everything on day one, and I removed out gluten, dairy, soy, artificial flavors and colors, and my son actually had 40 food sensitivities, and I removed them all out on day one.
Yeah.
Let's just say I ended up in a pile of heap on my bedroom floor with multiple panic attacks.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't know what to do, what to feed my family. this is not the approach that I teach the families that I work with. So, as I said a little bit earlier, Rome wasn't built in a day. Transforming your family's diet won't be complete in a day either. And so I think we need to shift our perspective. It's not a race, it's a marathon. It's okay to take things slowly. It's okay to take one step at a time. And if that pace that's doable for, that family is one change a week, or one change every 2 weeks, then that's perfectly okay. Families really need to give themselves permission to take things slow, because it is not a diet. It's not a phase. It's a permanent lifestyle change. And when it becomes part of your lifestyle, it becomes second nature. And then changes don't seem hard or overwhelming. So that's probably the biggest thing, the overarching one that, people can take away from this, because if you do try to change it all at once, it is going to get hard. It's not an easy process. Another challenge that families, come up against is, eating healthy can be more expensive. And so, someday I would love for this to change. I would love to see healthy food be the same price or even cheaper than that processed sort of CRAP. But that's a tangent for another day. But there are definitely things we can do to help make healthy eating more affordable. And one thing that really helped me in the beginning, it actually wasn't a way to save money, but more of sort of that mindset shift, is to remember that even though those cheaper sort of bad food choices may seem like they're easier and better for the budget today, they actually cost us more in the long run. They keep us on that emotional roller coaster in the form of tantrums, in the form of meltdowns, in the form of upset stomachs, in the form of debilitating ADHD symptoms. And so when I had this sort of mindset shift, it helped me so much, because I would much rather have a higher grocery bill today and a happier, healthier, calmer, thriving family than a lower grocery bill but constant tantrums of a child whose body was racked with inflammation.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And think about even with regards to down the road, right? Other issues that can come as an adult from poor nutrition,
100%.
inflammation, right? All the things we've been talking about. I mean, this is teaching kids a life lesson about just being healthy in general, which I think is amazing.
It is amazing. And, all of a sudden they start to feel better. And that's when they start to buy in. Look, we've been on this journey for years. My son's 14. He's been eating this way for a very long time, but he's a 14-year-old boy. He will go out with his friends and he will make a decision whether or not he should eat something that is not good for his body. And if he does, he now suffers the consequences.
Yeah.
It's not me trying to make that decision for him. He knows that eating this way is better for him, but he knows that if he doesn't eat this way, his body, his mind, his emotional regulation, his mood is the one that's going to suffer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so let's talk a little bit about functional lab testing, because there is some testing with regards to, natural support for ADHD. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Look, there are so many lab tests out there. There are 4 that I actually suggest to families to really, as a starting point, because it does give you that overall view of what's going on in the body. The first test is a stool test. It really gives us a clear picture of the state of the gut. So it's going to look for parasites, bacteria, worms, yeast overgrowth. There's also intestinal health markers. And the biggest reason why I suggest that is because of the gut-brain connection. I'm sure you've probably discussed the gut-brain connection on the podcast before.
I would say we have, but you know what? And not everybody's going to hear every episode. So let's talk a little bit about that so parents understand what that actually means.
Well, the gut and the brain talk to each other. It's kind of like this highway of communication. And so when you've got a broken down gut, it affects your brain. The main area that the gut talks to is the frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is responsible for things like attention, focus, executive function, planning, organizing, which are areas that most kids with ADHD suffer with.
Right.
The other biggest kicker for me is the gut is responsible for making 95% of our serotonin and 50% of our dopamine, which are our happy, feel good hormones or neurotransmitters that help regulate our emotions. They maintain our mood balance and help our cognitive function. Again, these are main symptoms that kids with ADHD suffer with. So ensuring that gut-brain connection is working well, ensuring the gut is functioning well will help all of those symptoms, help reduce those symptoms. And that's why I do, firstly recommend a stool test. I also recommend food sensitivity testing to really take out the things that are exacerbating that inflammation. And that's just temporary while we heal the gut. And, it can give you that guide as to what to remove out of the diet. I still always recommend that gluten and dairy and soy remove from the diet because they will create inflammation in other ways outside of those ones that are going to cause that blood reaction. The third test that I do is an organic acid test or an HTMA. So we sort of make a decision based on a child's symptoms. If we are sensing that they've got this imbalance in minerals or an overload in heavy metals, we will run an HTMA. The other test that we do is an organic acid test, which looks at 70 different markers in the whole body and how it's functioning. So it can show you things like detoxification. It can show you things like that serotonin and that dopamine. That's why I love that test, but we sort of make that decision based on each child. And then the last test that I use is something called a cryptopyrrole, and not many people talk about it. And Lisa, I love Vicon because you've created a specific supplement for us in when we actually do cryptopyrrole testing for the children that we work with.
Yeah.
And pyroles, what they are, they're a normal chemical byproduct in the body. And they attach to vitamin B6 and zinc and actually draw those elements out of the body when they're excreted through the urine. So if you've got these elevated pyroles, it can result in a dramatic deficiency of zinc and B6. And other people might have heard of it being called sort of pyroluria or pyroles or Malve factor. So there's a couple of different names for it, but it's frequently identified in behavioral disorders, ADHD, depression, aggression, violent behavior, and symptoms include things like poor tolerance to physical or emotional stress, poor anger control, mood swings, anxiety, poor short-term memory, not feeling hungry in the morning, poor dream recall. So a lot of those symptoms are symptoms that our kids with ADHD suffer with. And out of all the families that I work with, I've run a lot of these tests, I'd say about 50% have these elevated cryptopyrrole levels.
Wow.
And so what we want to do, it's actually interesting, but pyroles is driven via an underlying genetic predisposition and oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is the breakdown of the cells in the body, pretty much caused from inflammation, basically, at the end of the day. So what you want to do is you want to reduce that inflammation and you want to feed the body with antioxidants and vitamin B6 and zinc. And so this is this customized supplement that you can purchase based on those elevated levels.
Amazing. And what else, just outside of, let's say outside of the testing, what other, once they kind of dial in the diet,
Yep.
and maybe even have, if there are, obviously, if they test for cryptopyrrole, they're on that supplement. Is there anything else that's, that you would say bring into the diet as a support for a deeper level from a supplement perspective for children?
Yeah, look, definitely there's sort of like, I'd say 5 really good supplements that most kids with ADHD can benefit from. One of those is a really good quality fish oil for omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. There are many studies out there that suggest that fish oil can support memory, hyperactivity, clear thinking, behavioral disorders, organization skills in children. And so that's one of the best things that, families can bring in. Now, those omega-3s actually come from the Mediterranean diet, which is really rich in seeds and nuts and fish. But unfortunately, a lot of our kids are not eating enough fish and seeds. And that's why a good quality omega-3 supplement is really, really beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is a good quality probiotic, and that's because of that gut-brain connection, really helping that gut thrive. When you're helping that gut thrive, you're helping anxiety, you're helping mood. You're also supporting the body against the damaging mental and physical effects of stress.
Yeah.
The next one is magnesium. I'm sure you talk about magnesium a lot, but many parents find that magnesium makes a surprising difference with their kids' anxiety, their depression. It aids in sleep and relaxation. It also helps with hyperactivity. And there's, again, a lot of research to suggest that children with ADHD often have low magnesium levels. So using supplements can really help with that. The next one is vitamin D. Vitamin D can work wonders to support kids with ADHD and anxiety, especially when it's taken with the omega-3 fatty acid supplements. But one of the best ways to get that vitamin D is get out into the sunshine. But when you live in Seattle, Washington,
it's not always possible.
Not always possible. So a really good quality of vitamin D supplements works wonders.
Amazing. And I mean, omega-3s, I feel like, even when we think about processed foods, people talk about omega-3s, right? But we're not getting enough from our foods necessarily, right? Unless you're really consuming what you were talking about with regards to fish and our seeds and our nuts. And I feel like, many people don't end up going down that road, at least enough to have proper support.
100%. And I think, look, it can be really hard for parents. I would say about 70% of the families that I work with have a picky eater. And without the right support and guidance, it's really hard to get their kids to start eating some of these things. When you've got the right support and guidance, I can tell you I haven't found a picky eater that I haven't been able to help. There was one family that I worked with whose child ate 5 foods when they started with me. They'd already been through a year of feeding therapy. But once we actually started to reduce the inflammation and we started to bring in some targeted strategies, that palette just opened up. This lady is now one of my team. Her son is now eating over 250 foods and is definitely not a picky eater anymore. She was so taken back by the approach that she's like, I need to work for you.
Oh, that is amazing. That is passion right there when it comes, right? That is amazing. And I feel like, so what would you say just with regards to, so parents identifying this and hearing this, right? And saying, wait, maybe there is something here that that I've been missing that I need to dig into. What are some of the resources? I know you have your Facebook group, so we'll mention that again, but some of the resources that they can kind of start reading or taking part with to be able to just learn more and understand better.
Yeah, definitely. Look, as you mentioned right at the beginning, I have written a couple of books. I'd say that the best resource is my book, Thriving with ADHD, which is a guide to naturally reducing ADHD symptoms in your child. You can find that on Amazon. Going to my website, ADHD we have a really great blog where we deep dive into a lot of these strategies that families can read. I'm on YouTube. I share YouTube videos, which is ADHD Thrive Institute, and on all the social platforms as well. But the Facebook group is amazing. The support that you feel, the fact that you feel like you're not on this island on your own.
I was going to say that's one of the biggest things, which is great. Why you have, that group and that many people in the group. You said about 35,000, because I feel like, even as an individual, even if, whether it's your child or yourself, I feel like when there's something that you're dealing with, you always feel isolated and alone, right? And so to be able to have that support and know that you have others that are going through the same experience, that can share those experiences, is really, really helpful and amazing.
I think that is a huge key. That's one thing I did not have when I was going through this, and I was alone on this island by myself, but it is so wonderful to find the people that are going through these issues just like you are, and hearing advice and feeling not alone and getting that support. That's one of the key things to a successful journey.
Amazing. Well, and to close off, I'd love to hear, I mean, we always have, and of course, we get more and more cases, but we always have one, maybe more, but let's focus on one success story that we never forget. What would be
Yeah.
that? What would be that success story for you?
Wow. I have so many success stories. It's not funny.
It's hard to
You can,
pick.
it is. You can see actually I've got a page on my website which has all of the success stories, which is just amazing. It just makes you feel so good, especially knowing that you're on the right path. I think the biggest one of the best ones that I have was a mum that came to me. She actually had 3 boys. 2 of them were diagnosed with ADHD and one was with autism. And between the 2 boys with ADHD, the year prior to working with me, they had been suspended from school 32 times.
Oh my gosh.
She was on the verge of losing her job because every time they got suspended, she had to go and pick them up.
Right.
And in the year post working with me, they were not suspended once. They were on the honor roll. They were winning awards. And one of them jumped like 2 or 3 levels in reading just in that one year. That for me was just amazing.
Wow. And you know, as practitioners, as clinicians, when we have stories like that that happen, that is literally why we get out of bed in the morning. Right?
100%.
When you get that email or you get that phone call or you see that, it's just it is amazing. It makes it all worthwhile.
It does.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, that is a high note for us to leave this on. That was wonderful, Dana. And again, so you know, if you're listening to this, I always say everything comes into your universe at the right time. If you think you have a child that's dealing with ADHD, you know, reach out to Dana. Obviously, there's a Facebook group you can join. So ADHD Thrive Institute.com. We'll have all of Dana's links, of course, in the description, so you'll be able to find her very easily. And Dana, you work with all over the world, right?
Yeah, look, I work
Virtually.
mainly with America and Canada.
Yeah.
And so I do have some clients in Australia. I am Australian, but I do live in America. But I do have some clients in Australia and the UK, but mainly all over the USA and Canada. I am all virtual, 100% virtual.
Perfect. That's one of the beauties of Zoom and all of these amazing technologies we have, right? We can get access to people when they're not even in our neighborhood, which is fabulous. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dana. Thank you for giving us all this amazing information and sharing your knowledge. For those of you watching, thank you so much for tuning in to my YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to give this episode a thumbs up. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, give this episode a like, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks for joining us today on the Human Optimization Podcast. Episode technical production is by Grace Sylvester and guest booking by Stu Tate. Want to learn more? Visit Pitel-Killah.com for incredible free resources to supercharge your journey to becoming the best version of you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe to the Human Optimization Podcast and follow me on social media at Pitel-Killah.